Let's start it off with 49ers rookie quarterback, Mr. Not So Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. This week against Tampa Bay, he made Tom Brady look bad. His team showed them up strong and got pulled out for garbage time. So as we get to the playoffs, he's got a decent schedule, Rick. Do you feel like this is a guy that you're potentially considering if you've lost one of these other quarterbacks to injury? How do you feel about Purdy in the playoffs?
I mean, obviously the matchups are decent, but it's not somebody that I'm super comfortable putting in there yet. This was an efficiency-based matchup here with, only 21 attempts, got the rushing touchdown that really made his day. And I don't think we're going to be able to count on that. It's a little scary, but if you're desperate, it is a juicy schedule for the playoffs.
I don't hate it. And with that 49ers defense, they really can. I mean, this wouldn't surprise me if his stat line looks like this most of the playoffs because of that defense. So I'm with you. I'm not 100% trusting it, but if you need a quarterback, there's worse options. Next up, Jared Goff from my Detroit Lions. They made the Vikings not win the North for another week, which is nice. Continues to put up big numbers. The schedule is a little dicey next week. The Jets are a tough matchup, but then you get Carolina and Chicago, which are very nice fantasy matchups. How do you feel about Goff going forward? I know that you're a little bit higher on this guy than you would be a guy like Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I definitely feel fine starting Jared Goff, even against the Jets. Now I'm worried about the receivers in that game because, as we've seen, the Jets can shut down a receiving core like they did today for the Bills. But I think that the Lions are unique in the way that they can use those running backs in the passing game and get some other secondary pieces involved because they already spread the ball around. So guys like Khalif Raymond might get more targets. Obviously, we have Jamison Williams making his first splash today. So they've got so many weapons that I think that he'll be fine, but it's going to be hard picking what wide receivers are going to be able to have a day with, Sauce Gardner on the other side and really that whole secondary playing pretty well for the Jets. But I think Jared Goff will be fine. I think he's going to have the attempts, right? They give up points. Jets are probably going to, we'll have to see what happens at quarterback for the Jets, but they should be able to put up some points too and at least keep the Lions pushing the ball through the air. So I look forward to that matchup, actually. I think this is going to be where we find out how Detroit comes off of a big win and how they respond and setting them up to potentially make a wild card run, which, exciting for you, but it'll be a game to watch next week, I think, with the Jets and the Lions, and hopefully he keeps it going because I've got him in a couple spots where I'm going to be starting him in the playoffs, so I need him to keep it going.
As a Lions fan, I need him to keep it going too because it's the most exciting this team's been in a very long time.
Right.
All right, next up, we're not going to try to properly pronounce his name because there's zero chance that's happening. I'll be honest. So we're going to talk Chig Okonkwo, however you say his name. I do apologize. Tight end from the Titans. If you know his name, say it below. Help me out. He is looking pretty solid. Got 6 targets, caught all 6 of them, got you a touchdown this week. What's the deal here? Austin Hooper isn't a bad tight end, but other guys always seem to outshine him at certain points throughout the year. Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I just, like I talked pre-show, I feel like Austin Hooper is like good luck Chuck, except for with tight ends. It feels like every time he's on a team, they find a new tight end and he kind of gets relegated. And obviously Treylon Burks out with his injury that happened during the week. And they needed somebody to step up, and obviously they did not get the win. They got their butts handed to them by the Jaguars, and Trevor Lawrence looking like the quarterback we wanted him to be. But Chig just looks athletic and made some really nice plays today. I seen quite a bit of that game because there was always red zone going into that game, and I think he looks the part and could be a good tight end in this league. It's tough though, because we know how tight ends, they can pop one week and then they disappear another. And really, I think his schedule's decent. It's not great because the one matchup that you like or love you could just run the ball on him, and Derrick Henry's probably going to run for 160 yards, right? And thought he was going to go for 200 today, but then he only got like 2 rushing yards in the second half. But anyways, I think that he's a dart throw, but I think he's got what it takes to be a good tight end. And if he really breaks the end of the season, he could be big for playoffs. Literally there's like 5 guys you feel comfortable starting. And after that, it's just a
pray. You play the matchups and hope you're not wrong.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to.
You just play them and just hope they find the end zone.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next up, a guy that we've been telling you about all year. So it really shouldn't come as much of a surprise. We're telling you to play Evan Ingram, Jacksonville Jaguars. Ownership has gone up some, but the ownership's still way too low for a guy who's consistently getting targets week to week. Obviously, you can't expect 15 a week. He has had a couple of weeks where he's gotten you double-digit targets, so it's not uncommon. But this was huge. This was a boom week. Now, we've been saying that he's a guy that you want to play this year because he's been consistent and he's got great matchups the rest of the season. Where are you at with Evan Ingram?
Ever since Evan Ingram came into the league, he's obviously very, very athletic. We've seen him have a rookie year like we rarely see from tight ends, and there were some struggles, and we talked about it. Last year was a bad year for him, but with him and Trevor Lawrence really learning how to play together, he has been coming on strong. These last 2 weeks have been amazing. I think he's a good tight end that's going to get a lot of targets down the stretch. They're seeing how that works out, and I love Evan Ingram. I have no problem starting him the rest of the season.
I'm with you. All right, next up is Chris Moore, wide receiver from the Texans. Now, he seems like the last man up at this point. Brandon Cooks is out. Nico Collins out. This is one that come playoff time, look at that schedule. KC, Tennessee, Jacksonville. And we know Houston's going to have to throw a bunch anyway, but those are matchups they're not bad from their wide receiver position. Do you feel like Chris Moore is a guy that can really be successful come playoff times?
I feel like he's really sneaky because, Brandon Cooks is hurt, quote unquote, but I think it's more of his feelings. We've seen it. He wanted to be traded, didn't get traded, spoke out. I think he was even a healthy scratch 1 week right after the deadline because they were arguing. I think that Houston is going to look to see what they've got for next year. And I think Chris Moore could be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, solid depth on a team like he was this year. But the rest of the season, he may be the wide receiver 2. We don't know if Collins is going to be playing. We don't know if Brandon Cooks is going to be playing. It's a dart throw, but if he is the 1 or 2, as he showed today, he can get targeted and he catches everything that comes his way. He had one really, really good catch today that I saw. But with this schedule, if you can get Chris Moore and he does play those snaps and gets those targets, he could be real sneaky in the playoffs for a flex spot. Real sneaky.
Well, especially if you're one of those teams that's been dealing with just a bunch of injuries and you need to flex somebody in. This isn't a bad option if you can put a guy in who potentially is getting double-digit targets. That's big.
There's definitely the chance that he doesn't even play much, though. You didn't have to go back, but I was just going to say there's a chance he doesn't play very much or get very many targets because maybe Brandon Cooks and Nico come back. But
yeah, it is a buyer beware situation for sure. But it's definitely one of those. If you have the space, why not take a chance and see what happens? Next up is another one of my Lions. I know we talked about his quarterback here a little bit earlier, but DJ Chark, he's I think he was 5 targets 3 weeks ago when he came back from injury, then got 6 targets. Now he got 7 targets. He's gotten 2 touchdowns and 2 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks. He's getting heavily involved now. I know Jamison Williams is coming back, and obviously his first catch was a touchdown, so that means he's getting fitted for a gold jacket. But DJ Chark, at least in the short term, is a guy that feels like he can continue to get targeted, and they've got so many weapons and such a decent schedule going into the playoffs outside of the Jets, obviously. This is a guy that if you need a flex, if you're looking at Chris Moore and DJ Chark's out there, I go for DJ Chark over Chris Moore. How do you feel about Chark for the playoffs?
Well, there's no way I'm starting DJ Chark in week 15.
Oh, yeah.
Amon-Ra's the only one that I'm starting from the Lions and receivers in week 15, and there's still a good chance that he gets shut down if he gets sauce. We saw them, the leading receiver scored 6.8 points today for the Bills in PPR. Like, that's not what we're looking for. And like we talked with Jared Goff, like I think he'll get it and he'll spread it around enough, but I don't know if there's the upside that we want out of these receivers in week 15. So I'm on Raw, I'll start. Chark, I'm not. Now, when we look at week 17, I mean, fire everybody up. I mean, Brad, you can go play receiver for the Lions in week 17, and I'll throw you in my lineup because the Bears are not good and probably only going to get worse as we have had some injuries lately. So, yeah, after week 15, maybe, but Jameson Williams could. I mean, I don't care. You can make the gold jacket joke, but the skill level is drastically different between DJ Chark and Jameson Williams, and you guys are going to have two really good receivers at the top of your depth chart for a while here, and should feel pretty good about it. But I mean, DJ Chark's a fine number 3. I mean, I'm not going to say that, but the production could go down big time if Jameson Williams gets worked more and more into this offense.
Yeah, I don't argue that. It's hard for me to imagine with Amon-Ra clearly being a 1, Chark being the deep threat, and then them working Jameson. It's like I just don't know that Jameson gets enough of a workload over the next 2-3 weeks for me to not feel comfortable thinking about flexing Chark if I'm hurting at the receiver. And that's the question that you folks will have to answer for your rosters is what are you doing? Are you dealing with injuries? Are you deep enough? Those are all questions that we can answer in the comments if you got questions. Next up, Ben Skowronek from the Rams. Now, everybody saw Baker. He went ham and led them back to victory after 48 hours in LA. Skowronek's been solid most of the year. I mean, he's a guy that they can target, and he's not hugely appealing, but he's consistent and getting better, and he's getting targeted by Baker. So it seems like one of those guys that if you need to flex, he's not a bad option. I mean, the schedule's not terrible. He should be able to be valuable if you need somebody. Look at the ownership, super low. How do you feel about Ben Skowronek?
I started him this week in a league where and it's a playoff team, and I think he's just the safe one, right? Like, we could talk about Tutu Atwell as well. We could talk about Van Jefferson as well, but I think Skowronek is. And don't take this the wrong way if you're watching, but he is the Cooper Kupp of this offense, right? He's the one that's going to be the safe option. He's going to be the safety blanket for Baker. And I think we saw that this week, right? And he's not as good as Cooper Kupp. That's not what I'm trying to say. He's not going to score 30 points a game like Cooper Kupp does, but I think he's going to be the one that gets the 8 to 10 targets and 6 to 7 receptions and, somewhere in the realm of 70 to 100 yards, but he's not going to do the 180 yards and 2 touchdowns thing. Nope. That's not going to be him. But I think out of all the guys that we have on this list, he is one of the safest. I think he's got a safe floor because of the targets and being the safety blanket for Baker. And they obviously already have somewhat of a connection without even practicing together for a week, right? Because Baker was only there for 42 hours on that team before he took that start. So, yeah, I mean, obviously week 16 is not a pretty one. We probably don't want to start him there, but the other 2 weeks I feel pretty comfortable putting him in there as a safe player that doesn't have a big upside, but isn't going to lose me my playoff matchup.
Absolutely. Next up, Donovan Peoples-Jones. This is a guy we've talked about a little off and on throughout the season this year, and he's continued to produce now that Deshaun's under center. Got 12 targets this week. Has his playoff schedules. I don't know how I feel about necessarily. Week 16, New Orleans. I feel okay about Baltimore and the Chargers. I think those are pretty decent matchups for a guy like him. But remember, he's still number 2 on the team to Amari Cooper. How do you feel about him come playoff time?
I like him a lot in the playoffs, actually. And the reason why is 1, volume, and 2, Amari Cooper's, in that week 16 matchup, that's who Lattimore is going to be on, right? So I just think with the volume, with his skill set, with how fast he is, he can break a big play. He can beat you over the top. He has learned route running in the NFL, which you don't see a lot from guys, right? That weren't like, that was my big knock on him coming out, was that he wasn't a great route runner. And he has gotten a lot better at that on comeback routes, slants. He's doing everything now. And that's what makes you a good NFL receiver and somebody that we can put in our lineups in the playoffs and feel pretty good about. Just like Skowronek, he gets the volume. He's a safe play, I think. But unlike Skowronek, he's also got the ability to house one for 60 yards. That's what we've seen in his first 2 years, was flashes of him winning deep balls and scoring long touchdowns. And now that he's getting into that, he kind of reminds me of Will Fuller and the progression of Will Fuller at the beginning of his career, except for DPJ can stay healthy and on the field. But we saw that with Will Fuller, right? He was a long ball threat to start, and then he learned how to run routes and became a PPR guy later. Maybe it was because of the steroids, but I think we've seen that kind of progression from Donovan Peoples-Jones early in his career. And right now, I don't know how you don't put him in a lineup.
It's a good problem to have if you got DPJ. All right, next up, Zay Jones from the Jaguars. This is another guy that we've talked about throughout the year. Continues to just get a ton of targets and is heavily involved. He's one, though, that's got a really interesting playoff matchup. So Dallas, feel good about him there. The Jets, this is another one of those. If Sauce is on him, it's probably not happening. And then Houston, that's pretty good as well. So how do you feel about Zay Jones in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is that he is their number 2. And, you know, people are going to consider Christian Kirk the number 1. Now, I don't love the schedule, because if it's Dallas and he's got Diggs on him, then it could be a tough day. If it's the Jets, they shut everybody down. So I don't really want to start any Jags that week. And then Houston, they're just so bad against the run that people don't throw on them. And that could be dangerous if Jags play like they did today, which was through the air. But if they do that on the ground in that Houston game, then again, you lose the targets and everything. I'm probably still starting them in 15 and 17 if I've got them and don't have better options. I still feel pretty good about the floor because of the targets that he's getting. And I just think him, and again, like we talked about with Evan Ingram, him and Lawrence are just continuing to build that. I think he is the best receiver on the Jags right now.
All right, Jerick McKinnon from the Chiefs. This is a running back. I know we haven't really given you much by way of running backs because it's getting slim pickings out there, but he's still got an ownership level slightly lower than we'd anticipate for a guy who's been getting very involved on the pass catching side of things. And then you look at what the schedule looks like the rest of the season. This guy is very much strong consideration for flex or even starting running back for your team if you're dealing with a ton of injuries, just because of how involved this guy is getting as a pass catcher. How do you feel about him, as well as what's going on in the playoffs for the Chiefs?
I mean, you just can't argue against the receiving numbers, and I don't see that changing throughout the rest of the season. And I guess the biggest thing that will determine this is whether any of these teams score points, because we know Houston can get shut out. Seattle didn't look as good today. Geno didn't look as good as he had looked earlier in the season. And then Denver, I mean, they actually scored some points today, but that was the first time we'd seen that in a while. So who knows if they're going to do that again. So that could be the only thing that really hurts him. But right now, I think you have to consider him for flex. Obviously, week 15, Pacheco's probably the one in the backfield to own for the Chiefs. But if they give up some points in the playoff stretch for fantasy, then McKinnon could see 7, 8, 9 targets again. And if he does that, I mean, one of them was crazy, right? I don't know if you saw the Patrick Mahomes like side underarm throw to McKinnon when the guy came up because he was going to tackle Mahomes. And I mean, it was a fluky play. It was a good play, but it's Patrick Mahomes, right? It wasn't Jerick McKinnon making it, but it was a 50-yard touchdown, and you'll take it for fantasy. I think that he's definitely in consideration if you don't have better options, for sure.
All right. Next up is a guy that we have not mentioned probably in a long time as a waiver wire pickup, but Marlon Mack, running back from the Broncos. This one, Mike Boone got hurt during the game, so we don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And when Marlon Mack got involved, we saw shades of 2019 Marlon Mack. I mean, the big touchdown reception that he took, 50-some yards or whatever. I mean, it looked explosive, looked really solid. And this could be a guy that eats in. I mean, it's not like Latavius Murray is any kind of world beater, so it wouldn't surprise us if Marlon Mack got a little more involved. I mean, he's looked pretty solid with his opportunities today, average 5 yards on the ground. Where are you at with Marlon Mack in the playoffs?
I mean, this literally for me, like I would try to grab him everywhere he was available in any of my leagues, and not because I think that he's going to go and be dominant, but if they want to see who's our backup going to be next year, because their season's, done. If they want to find out who their backup is for next year, they need to give Marlon Mack some more work, because I don't think you want to go into next season thinking Latavius Murray at his age with the workload that he's had is going to be your guy. It's kind of like going into like they did this year with Melvin Gordon, and all they've had is issues with the, second running back. Well, actually all their running backs, because Javonte got hurt. Right. So I think they give him more opportunities. I think he's a better running back than Latavius Murray at this point of their career. And if he's fully healthy and has that spark like it looked like he had today, he could get a ton of work the next 3 weeks.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he got heavily involved in any of the teams. So I'm with you. It's one of those dart throws, but it's one of those dart throws that if it pays off come playoff time and you've been dealing with injuries, this guy could put you over the hump. I mean, why not take a chance on him, right? All right, another guy that everybody, we're not the only ones. Everybody's been telling you to pick up, and he's been paying dividends. I mean, he's looked like their best running back since Breece Hall went down. Zonovan Knight from the Jets. This guy's got a solid schedule. I know Detroit's been really strong against opposing running backs recently, but doesn't mean he can't get involved as a pass catcher out of the backfield and get you some value. And then after that, the schedule lightens up. Super easy matchups against Jacksonville and Seattle. You fire him up. I mean, he becomes almost a must start those last 2 weeks depending on what your roster looks like. How do you feel about Knight going forward?
Yeah, I think this kid's good. I think that he's one of those undrafted free agent running backs that had it, and for whatever reason, teams didn't buy into it in the draft. And he is just, I didn't know the first week, because it was against the Bears, if he was actually good or if the Bears just made him look good. Mm-hmm. And then this week, it wasn't as easy, but he battled through. He's getting the touches. He's relegated Michael Carter, who came back healthy this week, to not even a 1B, but he had like 5 carries or something. Zonovan Knight's going to get to work. I'm throwing him in my lineups all playoffs, and I'm riding with it. I think that he is in a position to be a league winner, down the stretch here.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a huge play going forward. Thank you guys. As always, that's this week's Waiver Wires. If you're looking for rookie content for 2023, rotoheat.com.